Hello, this is Danny Pellegrino, host of the Everything Iconic podcast, and I'm here to tell you all about Splash Refresher, because hydration is mandatory, but boring is not. Now, I love my water, but if I don't spice it up, I'm not going to finish what I took out of the fridge. That's why I love my Splash Refresher, which is flavorful, delicious, bright, hydrating, and 0 calories. The wild berry flavor is my fave. No, wait, is the pineapple mango flavor my fave? You know what? All 5 craveable Splash Refresher flavors are my fave because they're so delicious. So get hydrated and enjoy it with Splash Refresher.
We all belong outside. We're drawn to nature, whether it's the recorded sounds of the ocean we doze off to, or the succulents that adorn our homes. Nature makes all of our lives, well, better. Despite all this, we often go about our busy lives removed from it. But the outdoors is closer than we realize. With All Trails, you can discover trails nearby and explore confidently. With offline maps and on-trail navigation, download the free app today and make the most of your summer with All Trails.
Welcome to mini episode 384 of Real Life Ghost Stories, and I have 4 spooky stories for you today, and the last story comes from the 31st of July 2024, and story number 1 comes from Rebecca. I have a story of my grandma's to share that links to a little story of my own. I lost my grandmother 5 years ago. She helped raise me and shape me into the person that I am. I'm the eldest of her grandchildren, and we always shared a special bond. I adored her. My grandma had always been spiritual. She read tarot and taught me to do the same. She also attended spiritualist church on and off in her life. But it's the stories that she told me about her grandmother, Granny Roberts, visiting her years after her death that have always interested me. My grandma had a really tough start to life. She grew up dirt poor with an abusive drunk for a father, and her granny's house was her refuge. They had a bond like we did, 2 peas in a pod, 2 witches cackling in a coven. My grandma married my grandfather young, and whilst they had 2 children, my grandma struggled in the marriage. My granddad was in the RAF, so was away for the majority of the time, and he wasn't a great emotional communicator. When my mum was 16 and my uncle was 13, she decided it was time for her to end the marriage. She was done. She wasn't happy. She had met my step-grandfather at work, and they had begun their relationship, and so my grandma walked away. She walked away with just her clothes, and my step-grandfather did the same from his marriage. They came together with nothing, and it was hard. Finding somewhere to live was hard on their minimal wages. They found a little place that they really couldn't afford, and one evening, my grandma found herself sitting in an almost desolate kitchen, sobbing her heart out into a mug of tea. It was too hard. Had she made the right choice? They were really struggling. It frightened her. This house didn't even have a proper kitchen. Should she go back to my granddad, who had always been financially stable and was now writing her the most beautiful love letters? What if she had made a huge mistake? She said she was crying hard when she suddenly smelled Granny Roberts' kitchen. She felt a hand on each of her shoulders as if someone was standing behind her. Felt the words of comfort in her mind. I can't exactly remember what my grandma told me, but it was along the lines of, things will always work out. And calm just seeped through her. It didn't last long. She then wiped her face, took a sip of her tea, and knew that she had made the right choice to leave. Granny Roberts had never seen her wrong before. And surprisingly, things always did work out. Like the trip to town where they ended up on the wrong road for some reason that they could never work out, and spotted a sale at a kitchen fitter's where they had just pulled in for a look, and the salesman piled up their trolley whilst they laughed, telling him they couldn't afford it, only for him to charge them 5% of the price. Like the insurance salesman who knocked one day randomly and managed to convince them to take out flood insurance. 1 week before their entire house was flooded and they had ticked the new for old option. Grandma always said Granny Roberts had a hand in it. And now to me. I was a gangly 13-year-old and was coming out of maths class following the flow of students down the stairs for a break. As I reached the top of the stairs, I smelt my grandma's kitchen. It hit me. The smell of my step-granddad's cigarette smoke, stovetop coffee, old paper, jasmine and roses. I panicked. I knew what that meant. Once I got to the bottom of the stairs and out of the crush of students, I raced to the bank of 3 payphones available for students to use and called home. My mum answered and I asked her if Grandma was okay. I smelled her kitchen. My mum didn't even bat an eyelid. Of course I had called. Grandma had been sent home from work with a heart murmur. She was fine, but yes, she had been very frightened. Since Grandma passed 5 years ago, I have been waiting for her to visit. She surely would try to tell me that we were right, that it was all real. The spirits are just waiting in the next room over. Maybe I have been missing signs in my household with 2 small boys and my ADHD. Anyone could have put something out for me to find. Maybe she has tried to appear to me in my mind's eye, like she said her mum did one Christmas. But I have aphantasia, so I have no mind's eye. Maybe her dementia had followed her into the next place and she didn't remember who I was. This last one terrified me the most. She finally came to me in a dream in March this year on her birthday. I got to hold her hand and walk with her. I got to spend the day with her. I got to say goodbye. I woke in floods of tears but filled with relief. She had checked in. She is just in the next room over. I love that analogy of our loved ones that have passed away just being in the next room over. I think it's such a lovely and comforting way to think about death. And what a brave thing for your grandmother to do, you know, all those years ago, to leave your granddad. I mean, obviously the relationship wasn't good, the marriage wasn't good, she couldn't do it, so she was like, I've got to go with just the clothes on my back. That's such a massively brave thing to do. And fundamentally, you know, if it's not working, it's not working. But I also can only imagine the fear that you would feel kind of sitting in that desolate kitchen and going, oh my God, why did I leave? I had money, I wasn't happy, but I had money for the kids, you know, and could I have made it work? And is this the right thing to do? Like those are horrible thoughts to be thinking, you know. And then looks like Granny Roberts came just when she was needed. And apparently our sense of smell is the most powerful memory trigger for us, so it would make sense that she would come in the form of the smell of her kitchen, which I imagine was like the centre of the house, the hub of the house. And to feel those hands on your shoulders, and then that feeling of things are always going to work out, they'll be okay. And, you know, that came just when your granny needed it. And I also think it's lovely to think that our loved ones have a hand in steering us in the right direction, like randomly coming across that kitchen sales where they're selling kitchens for 5% of the price, and randomly getting flood insurance like a week before the house floods. I mean, it's pretty incredible, and you'd like to think that her granny had just a little helping hand in steering that all in the right direction. And I wonder if, because her granny communicated with her in that way, that's how she communicated with you. Like, I know she was alive and had been sent home from work with a heart murmur, but I wonder if, I don't know, her soul, her subconscious, whatever it is, that's how it knew how to communicate, and therefore that's how it chose to communicate distress to you too. And I do think a lot about the fact that some people get visitations, some people don't. And I know that some people get quite upset about the fact that they don't get a visitation. But I wonder if it just doesn't work like that. You know what I mean? That you only end up getting the visitation when you really need it rather than when you want it. That it just isn't as simple as like, please give me a sign. That it's not how the afterlife works, you know? Anyway, either way, I am glad that you got your visitation dream.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Make another smart choice with Auto Quote Explorer to compare rates from multiple car insurance companies all at once. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Hey, true crime fans! Tired of ads interrupting your gripping investigations? Good news! With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. After all, ads shouldn't be the scariest thing about true crime. To start listening, download the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free true crime. That's amazon.com/ad-free true crime to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
Millions of people have lost weight with personalized plans from Noom. Like Evan, who can't stand salads and still lost 50 pounds.
Salads generally for most people are the easy button, right? For me, that wasn't an option. I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. But Noom worked for me.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom user compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
Need new glasses or want a fresh new style? Warby Parker has you covered. Glasses start at just $95, including anti-reflective, scratch-resistant prescription lenses that block 100% of UV rays. Every frame's designed in-house with a huge selection of styles for every face shape. And with Warby Parker's free home try-on program, you can order 5 pairs to try at home for free. Shipping is free both ways, too. Go to warbyparker.com/covered to try 5 pairs of frames at home for free. warbyparker.com/covered.
Story number 2 comes from Margo. This happened when I was really little. I want to say when I was around 5 to 7 years old. I had this penguin stuffed animal that my parents gave to me. That penguin was the first ever penguin I had, and it started my penguin obsession. I still collect them to this day. I had this penguin where it can turn into an igloo as its home. One day I was going to bed and I had this nightmare that I remember to this day. It was me and my bunk bed. I was sitting on the ground with what looked like blood on the ground and red lights shining on the top bunk. I could see a small shadow on the top bunk, but I couldn't see what it was until it turned around, and it was my penguin. I was so confused and a little scared because it had a knife with him. The knife had blood on it. Then he had the head of another penguin exactly like him. I'm guessing the penguin he killed was the good penguin and that he was the bad penguin trying to get power. The penguin that he was holding was decapitated with the stuffing all over the bed and some blood. In fear, I sat there scared to move. Then the penguin with the knife looked at me and said, "You're next," and lunged at me. I tried to scream, but I couldn't. I even tried to run to the door, but it felt like I was running in slow motion. Then I woke up and told my mom I was scared and she let me sleep with her. After that night, I stopped sleeping with the penguin and slept with a different stuffed animal, and I didn't have that dream again. But one day I slept with the penguin again, thinking maybe it was just a one-time thing. It was not a one-time thing, and the same dream happened again and again and again when I slept with it. Soon I stopped sleeping with it and gave it to my dog. To this day, I'm still sad that I had to throw it away because my dog destroyed it. But I knew there was something about it that wasn't the same anymore. My second story is short, so here it goes. One day I was going to sleep. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. And I did, but I think I was in a dream where my eyes were closed or it was a really dark room. But then a black blob or shadow came from the left, then to the right and stayed in the middle. It felt as if it was so close to me. It was just there for a good 10 seconds, then it seemed as if it went for me. Not like me being possessed, like if it bumped into me. Then I woke up kind of struggling to breathe. To this day it hasn't happened, but it feels like I see something from the corner of my eye at work or at home or even just outside in broad daylight. Evil penguin is definitely a first for us. And in this email, Margo posited the question about whether or not I thought these instances were paranormal. And honestly, hand on heart, I don't think Murderous Penguin was paranormal. I think it was probably a terrible dream, and as a result, you couldn't look at the penguin in the same way again. Do you know what I mean? And I know that it happened again and again when you slept with the penguin in the bed, but then I wonder if you had primed yourself because you were so freaked about the dream in the first place, and when you had the penguin in the bed you were thinking, oh my god, what if I have the dream again? And then as a result you had the dream again because you were thinking about it so much. I had visions of Chucky when I was reading this story. Visions of taking that small penguin and booting it into oblivion, straight out the window and into next week. And that is not to take away from the terror that you probably felt at the time, because those kind of nightmares are absolutely terrifying, especially when you're like, is there a grain of truth in this? And especially when it makes you see something differently in the real world. Like, that is absolutely genuinely terrifying. And I wonder if your second experience is kind of like a sleep paralysis type thing, particularly when you said that you woke up struggling to breathe. That would make me think that potentially it was a sleep paralysis type situation. And story number 3 comes from B. I moved back into my parents' home at the beginning of 2022 with my daughter for about a year. This was not the home I grew up in. It was a new build after the 115-year-old house I grew up in burnt down in 2019. In this new house, I chose a huge bedroom in the basement. I loved that room and had it set up perfectly. I had nothing but good vibes in it, but I just knew that there was another female energy there. There were countless times that I would lose the TV remote or something else of that size, and I would look everywhere for it. I would eventually resort to saying, "Okay, Ghosty, I know you hid my remote. I'm okay with you being here, but I need it back. I'm going to go to the washroom, and I'd like you to put it somewhere I will find it when I get back." Without fail, each time I would find the item that was missing in a super obvious place, where I had checked at least 2 times already. There were even a few times I would find the item in a location that I would never have put it, but it was a super visible location, like on my bookshelf or on top of my bedside lamp. I know this story isn't exhilarating, but I miss my ghost friend. I've since moved to Saudi Arabia and she didn't come along. Listen, not all stories need to be super long and super exhilarating, as you put it. It's very interesting that you sensed this female presence but sensed no kind of discomfort or malice from her. And obviously she was trying to make herself known in her own way by taking things that you needed or were immediately using, like the TV remote, and then when you're like, okay, I get it, right, fine, haha, put it back though, I'm going to leave the room and I want you to put it back. And then she would. I mean, that's pretty amazing. Albeit very annoying. Maybe book the trend, ghost. Maybe find things instead. Or maybe leave little generous gifts around the place rather than taking things and hiding them. I'd be very happy if I was watching TV, went to go to the toilet, came back and there was a little gift waiting for me on my cushion. Like a carrot. That sounds really random, but I really like carrots. It's an ongoing thing. So maybe let's spice things up a bit and change the record. And story number 4 comes from Alex. My older cousin died when I was 24. She had always looked out for me since I was a kid, so it was quite a shock. A few months later, I went through a really hard breakup with my first love. It consumed me and I really thought my life was over. I could see no future for myself. Anyway, you get the picture. I was in a really deep depression. I went to bed after a particularly dark few days and had a really vivid dream of my cousin. It was shocking to see her, and the dream felt different, more intense than a regular dream. It was really short, but what I do remember was her playing the song Spice Up Your Life. I know it sounds ridiculous saying it out loud, but as soon as I heard that, I woke up with that song in my head and a strong sense that my cousin was telling me something. It felt as though she knew I was going through a rough time and came back to help me move on. Anyway, that's when I decided to do something and I moved to Canada to spice up my life, I guess. The next one is also a dream, but it kind of shook me up and proved to me that there is life after death. I had a great aunt who used to live abroad and would come home to visit every so often when I was a kid. When she did come home, she always made time to ask about me, how I was and what plans I had for the future. As she got older, she visited less and less, so I hadn't seen her in quite a few years. One night I had a very vivid dream. I remember an old lady asking me all about my life, what I had been doing and what I planned to do. I honestly don't remember anything about what was said. This part was a blur. I just remember the premise. She said she had to go, gave me a kiss and got into a car. An older man got into the passenger seat beside her. I didn't see his face and she drove off laughing. The last thing I remember was right in front of my face was an old lady's leg, just the calf with tights on. I tried waving this away but couldn't and just woke up with a terrible pit in my stomach like something was wrong. I got a call later that day to tell me that my aunt had passed away the previous day, and that my uncle, her brother, had also passed 2 days ago. When I was talking to my mum about how she passed, my mum said, "Oh, did you know she had her leg amputated before she passed away?" This floored me, and I told my mum about the dream I had. I do have dreams on a regular basis now about relatives or friends who have passed. Even today, it's almost daily, but I can never remember what is said, which is not helpful. Anyway, my last story is a really weird one and not dream related, you'll be glad to hear. A few years ago, I moved into an older apartment building with my then partner. Odd things started to happen there, but none ever scared me for some reason. The first thing that would happen was the bedroom light would suddenly go on by itself, always at 3 a.m. I just put it down to bad wiring in an old house. Next, I had one of those novelty metal toys that make a noise if you touch the metal frame. You know the ones where you trace the shape and if you touch it you need to start again? Well, mine was the shape of a bottle. My brother had bought it for me as a joke one year, so if the frame was touched it would make a breaking glass noise. Anyway, this thing started going off by itself. It was on top of the kitchen cabinets, so no one was near, but it strangely went off only at particular times. Like if I made a joke or said something silly, this thing would go off, so the timing was perfect. The last thing that happened, that did kind of freak me out, was a bit different though. It scared me. I was laying in bed when I heard banging on our front door over and over. When I rushed down to answer it, the cops were there. They asked for me and I said, "Yes, that's me." They asked if everything was okay, and I was so confused. Again, it was around 3 a.m. and I had just woken up. I said I was fine. Why? They told me that someone from my address had been calling 911 and hanging up over and over again. I was so confused because I didn't have a landline. I asked what the number was and they gave me my internet line number. I didn't have a landline phone to plug into my internet line. It was literally just for the internet, so an internal connection only. I was so confused that I called the internet provider the next day, who confirmed that a call out on that line was impossible. So that did shake me up a bit, but I was still never scared in the house. I'm not sure why. If ever there was a mantra to live by, it is spice up your life. And you sure did spice up your life by moving to Canada. I love that. Also, how wild that you had that dream about your aunt and that she had her leg amputated, and the last thing you remember in your dream was just an old lady's leg, just the calf with the tights on. Like, what a random thing to dream about. And that's the type of thing where you wake up and you go, I'm not eating cheese late at night again because that was fucking mental. That's so weird. That's so weird. And I do think that people have this, I don't know, they carve this connection in life and then you know when things happen to that person. And as for the apartment that you live in now, like, lights going on at 3 a.m, annoying. The toy that you're talking about kind of buzzing, going off at particular times, I'm kind of here for it because it's like a bum whenever you make a joke or say something silly. I love it. I would want that in my life. Like, that is comic timing. I'm here for it. However, the repeated 911 calls over and over again from a landline that doesn't fucking exist in the house, that is honestly petrifying. I can't even imagine the fright that you got opening the door and it's the police and they're like, "Are you okay? You know, you've been calling us," and you're like, "I'm really sorry, but I've been asleep." Like, oh my God, you'd get such a fright and you'd be thinking, what the heck is going on? Like, is that a residual thing? Did something happen in that apartment, in that house before, where somebody had to call 911 and that's why it keeps happening? Like, it's residual. If there was a landline in the house, you could maybe understand it more, where you could be like, oh, maybe it's just a really weird, really specific fault. But the fact that there's no landline is crazy. Like, you can't, like, the fact that it's impossible as well, that they, you know, calling the internet provider and they were like, no, that can't have happened. That is so weird. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Thank you to Rebecca, Margo, B and Alex for sending in your stories. Remember, the last story came from the 31st of July 2024. And if you would like to send in your story, you can do so by emailing it to reallifeghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com. You can also check out the website, reallifeghoststoriespodcast.com. And if you are desperate for some extra content, you can subscribe to the Patreon. That is patreon.com/real life ghost stories, where for $5 a month or $2 a month you get access to heaps of extra content, as well as every single main and mini episode completely ad free. And on that note, I shall see you next time.
Need new glasses or want a fresh new style? Warby Parker has you covered. Glasses start at just $95, including anti-reflective, scratch-resistant prescription lenses that block 100% of UV rays. Every frame's designed in-house with a huge selection of styles for every face shape. And with Warby Parker's free home try-on program, you can order 5 pairs to try at home for free. Shipping is free both ways, too. Go to warbyparker.com/covered to try 5 pairs of frames at home for free. warbyparker.com/covered.